Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 12th weekend podcast for the 3rd of January 2021.
Nice.
Getting the date right. And I'm joined by Hugo, and we'll be talking about the fact that the Great Reset is a big conspiracy theory. There is no truth to the Great Reset whatsoever, says the ADL. So tell me about this.
Well, turns out the Great Reset is still a conspiracy theory, right? We actually did a segment or a weekend podcast segment or something like that about a month ago. We covered several articles that were saying the Great Reset is a conspiracy theory, and apparently now it's still a conspiracy theory. But the tone has changed a little bit. I've noticed that in the beginning, people like Trudeau and others were saying, okay, like the Great Reset is just like something that some crazies are talking about. This is not real. Like this is all conspiracy theory. But obviously it's like real. They're trying to make it as public as possible. This is a public thing. They're trying to gather as much support as possible. Like this is World Economic Forum's like flagship plan. That's the branding that they have over what they do this year.
Like if it wasn't real, why would the World Economic Forum spend so much money on making videos with famous people saying we need a Great Reset?
It's just silly to call the thing itself a conspiracy theory, right? But then it has changed a little bit, because since then more articles have been coming out, and those have been more saying something like the Great Reset itself is a real thing. But then a lot of people who have been covering the Great Reset, and they've been covering it in the way that it actually creates conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah.
And so some of that might be legit. So let's look at what we have here.
Just in case anyone doesn't know, but you probably do. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League,
right.
They're an organization that they would probably describe themselves as primarily focused on logging and documenting hate groups or the like. A pretty obviously loaded term. If you want to be charitable to them, they'd be a source for finding out, white nationalists or far-right people and finding out which groups are that kind of thing. But they've had huge problems in the past that they keep getting sued for defaming people who are not that sort of thing.
Anti-Defamation League.
Yeah, the Anti-Defamation League gets sued for defamation.
Yep.
So I wanted to make that clear, but also it's interesting to see them writing about conspiracy theories as if this has anything really to do with anti-Semitic hate crimes or things like this.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, there can be a connection sometimes, right? So if you think something is a conspiracy, if you think something's really crazy, you can make some group a target of that kind of hate, of that, like being a source of that conspiracy, so you can provoke hate towards those people, right? Fair enough, that can happen. So it's not that far fetched, but still, it's not
strange,
something. It is a little strange. Yep.
So anyway, take me through some of the interpretations they're claiming are conspiracies.
Right, so they're saying, since first emerging in the spring of 2020, the Great Reset conspiracy has gained traction with the ongoing spread of COVID-19 in both mainstream and fringe circles alike. In its most common form, adherents warn that, quote, global elites will use the pandemic to advance their interests and push forward a globalist plot to destroy American sovereignty and prosperity. So this is the basic framing that they use. Notice that they haven't used any outrageous claims or mentioned anything particularly conspiratorial, right? They're saying, okay, global elites, that's a vague term that's being used anywhere. It's not just necessarily connected to any conspiracies. This is like a normal thing to say, right?
Pretty standard, Bernie rallies, you'd hear this sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Globalist. Okay, that's a right-wing term, fair enough, but it's not something that is unreasonable. It can be a fair descriptor of some people. Okay, fine.
The top 1%, the really elite and powerful.
Yeah.
Who can actually get
all,
things done.
all the ones that promote in the cooperation of international institutions and the kind of creation of that overarching international framework of politics, right? Fair enough. Like this is a fair descriptor. Like it's not a smear or a conspiracy or anything like that. And so plot to destroy American sovereignty and prosperity. Okay, that's a claim, but it's not a strong claim, right? It's not something like QAnon or something like that. Like saying something really outlandish, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're arguing, like we mentioned in the previous episode, about climate lockdowns, I mean, that would do that. That would destroy American prosperity.
Yeah, not just American prosperity,
global prosperity. But if you did it in the United States,
so
what else would that be?
So they continue. The conspiracy first surfaced in earnest in June 2020, After the World Economic Forum, the prominent international non-governmental organization behind the annual Davos conference introduced the Great Reset Initiative, an effort to reduce global inequality and advance environmental initiatives in the wake of the devastation of the coronavirus.
I mean, just from that paragraph there, global elites. If you were to describe a global elite, would it be the kind of people who operate a non-governmental organization that meet in Davos annually?
Prominent international non-governmental organization.
International organization. Well, if I had to describe a global elite, it would be the kind of people who do things like that.
And who else would have the aim to reduce global inequality? Like if you're talking about global inequality, you need to be part of the global elite, in order to be able to do something about it, or just to think in that way, right? If you're some kind of like guy who has a mom and pop shop over like somewhere, you're not thinking about global inequality because you can't affect it in any way, right? So it's just like this just reads weird, right?
Like this conspiracy theory about the global elite. Also, these global elitists meet every year to discuss how to solve the world's problems through massive international organizations.
Exactly, and so from that part, you can see kind of the way they're going with it, right? The Great Reset is real, but it's good, right? And if someone calls it bad, they're probably doing it for the wrong reasons and for the wrong purposes. So we're gonna call them conspiracy theories because it's obviously good, right? And so it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that you saying that it's bad is misleading people because it's actually good, right? So they talk about a letter that Trump has received from an archbishop called Callum Vigano, and he wrote to Trump, quote, "A global plan called the Great Reset is underway." True. Its architect is a global elite that wants to subdue all of humanity. Okay, that's a bit hyperbolic.
The global elite part, definitely true. Subdue all of humanity. It's an opinion.
Yeah. Imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations. True. Well, we've covered this over the previous weeks. That's part of it. In several nations, this plan has already been approved and financed. True. In others, it is still in an early stage. True. Behind the world leaders who are the accomplices and executors of this infernal project, hyperbolic,
but that's who it would be.
There are unscrupulous characters who finance the World Economic Forum and Event 201, true, promoting the agenda, true. Okay, just to add, Event 201 is something separate from the World Economic Forum. As far as I know, it's a simulation of a pandemic and a reaction to a pandemic that was done in 2018 or something like that, 2019 maybe. It's something that is often done. It's not something that would be alarming that someone did that a year before the pandemic, right? These things happen all the time. People are trying to prepare themselves for the pandemic often. So this is not something that would be really related. It's quite far-fetched, so this would be kind of conspiratorial if you were to call it, okay, this was all planned, because he's kind of insinuating that. And so okay, like this part is something that could be construed as a conspiracy theory of some sort. The rest of it, not really. It's just saying things that are broadly true in a non-favorable light, which is, in his opinion, like why would you smear him for it? So on her November 13th show, Laura Ingraham apparently described the global reset as a way for, quote, powerful people to use this pandemic as a way to try and force radical social and economic change across the continents. The fact is, all the signs point to Joe Biden's team being fully on board with this cynical and sick subversion of American independence and sovereignty. Sure, this is hyperbolic too, this is angry, but we've already talked about last week or the week before how Joe Biden is quite on board. That's a fair statement to make.
If not him, his team, definitely. The ones who do the writing for him,
and the ones who speak for him, right? So it was John Kerry who spoke at the Great Reset, and he said, okay, we're gonna see big changes as soon as Biden gets in, and so we're prepared to do this. We're in agreement with you on this, right? So this is just I don't know. I don't really know how to interpret this, really. like why is the ADL trying to smear these people with saying, okay, these are conspiracy theories, when what they're saying is mostly true? Okay, there's some things that are hyperbolic, but it's not something that would be unconscionable or anything like that, or hateful, right?
Yep.
It's if it's hateful, it's against people who can defend themselves very well, like
Global
the
elites.
global elite. Okay,
They'll be fine. They'll live.
The poor global elite, they're the victims. Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
So then it says Tucker Carlson also spoke about this.
Mm-hmm.
So what defamation is he engaging in?
Well, he just mentioned that on his show a couple of times. He talks about it actually quite a lot, and so he's mentioned that as well because he has a huge audience, and
Okay. But he's talking negatively about it.
Yeah, and so that's part of it. I'm actually gonna come back to Tucker Carlson with the next article. Right, and so that's the ADL's positions. That this is the people who are talking about it are bad because they are talking about it in negative light, and so they are therefore conspiracy theorists.
I see Glenn Beck's name there as well. I mean, these are pretty standard Republican
Yeah,
conservatives.
yeah.
None.
And that speaks to the fact that it's not something obscure. It's something that is talked about, that mainstream news covers. That is not just. That is not QAnon, right? And I'm talking about QAnon because in the next article talks about it as well. So we might get through because this it just goes on in a similar vein, and I don't think it's worth going to the end.
No.
So the next one is The Great Reset Conspiracy Smoothie by Naomi Klein. You might know Naomi Klein because she's very famous. She wrote the what is it called shock therapy, like that's her shock doctrine. That's her big book. She was talking about how governments use crises to do nefarious things, which is fair, but she's also a socialist, so she draws the exact opposite conclusions of what a reasonable person would. And so she's a prominent environmental activist as well. Like that's her career in the nutshell. And so she wrote this piece for The Intercept, and she actually has a bit of a different opinion on the Great Reset and on how it is a conspiracy or not from the rest, because she's saying the Great Reset is not something that is really worth talking about, because it's something that the World Economic Forum does anyway, and it's just a branding difference, right? And so she says, the latest Davos effort was called the Great Website. I mean, the Great Reset. And though articles, videos, webinars, podcasts, and a book by WEF founder Klaus Schwab, it provided a coronavirus-themed rebranding of all the things Davos does anyway, now hastily repackaged as a blueprint for reviving the global economy post-pandemic by seeking for a better form of capitalism. And I think she's basically right in that. It's she then goes on like explaining what she means, that it's the rich and powerful like coming together and saying how we're going to do things differently because we suddenly decided to do things differently. So that's a very fair point by her. She's saying this is nothing new. This is just a branding thing. So all the people that are talking about it so much, they are not necessarily wrong, but they're
conspiracists for being negative.
No. She's saying it's weird that all these people are focusing on it just now, only because of the branding, only because it's called the Great Reset, and 2 years ago when it was called something else, but it was exactly the same thing, exactly the same kind of initiatives. No one really cared. It's just they blew up because everyone's kind of nervous and looking for what's going on this year, right?
Okay.
So that's what she's saying, which is like fair, because she continues, the Great Reset is merely the latest edition of this gilded tradition, basically barely distinguishable from earlier Davos big ideas, from, quote, shaping the post-crisis world from 2009 to, quote, rethink, redesign, rebuild 2010 to, quote, the Great Transformation 2012, and who can forget, quote, creating a shared future in a fractured world 2018. So these have been the names, the labels that the Davos conferences have adopted for the previous years, right? And so some of these things sound very similar to the Great Reset, and I think there's a good point to be made by her saying, okay, like this is nothing new. This is just a different name of the same thing, of the Davos conference, of what they do anyway.
It's no counter of any criticism that's laid at it, though.
No. And so this is pretty much, I noticed that although I rarely agree with Naomi Klein on things, this is pretty much in line with what I've been saying. There's an article on lotuseaters.com that's called An Actual Great Reset that I wrote about a month ago that talks about what an actual Great Reset might look like instead of what they're proposing, which is more of the same, which makes sense if this is what they have been doing all this time, and this is just a different branding, right? And so then she says, okay, the Great Reset has attracted conspiracy theories from far left and far right, and she's positioning herself and not being far left, although she is. That's a fair descriptor, not me being hyperbolic. And so according to her, the Great Reset is not far left and is not basically the Green New Deal. That's her main claim. That when people say that it's just the Green New Deal and it's just another way of pushing the Green New Deal, that they're wrong, and that people who say this are Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro or people like that, and that they're like putting these things together even if they don't belong together. So she says, do these people honestly think that Schwab is in cahoots with AOC and using the pandemic to put BP out of business with the full cooperation of BP? Of course not. So that's a very good point. Like this, it's this is the Great Reset is an initiative that involves many powerful people, many powerful companies, institutions, and it's something that is not far left in the sense of, okay, we're working for the interest of the working class, of the proletariat. Like this is not it. This is a corporatization of the economy. This is part socialistic, part technocratic, but it's not something that the far left would want, and you can see that by the protests that are almost every year held at Davos or at the G20 meetings in Hamburg.
But it attracts the global socialist types who think they can at least use the power in some way.
There's a difference because all these protesters, like all of them, basically are far left. Like there's no far right protesters or anything just right wing protesters against Davos, right? That's not a thing. Just all those people are radical leftists who see this as a capitalist plot, which is they use terms differently than the right wing, so it makes sense on those terms, right? And so. So we, from the position of someone who's neither a Davos person or a far leftist, like there might be some similarities between what Davos wants and what the far leftists want, but they hate each other, right?
The end goals are different.
The end goals are different, and the means are different as well. Like this is just different goals. Although if you look at from afar, they might kind of look as if they're closer together.
Well, it's very similar to the EU. I mean, there are loads of far left groups that hate the EU because of the way it works, but there are also left wing types who absolutely love it, and they see it as a means to propose things they want.
Right, and so then she says that none of this is to say that Schwab's reset push is benign and unworthy of scrutiny. All kinds of dangerous ideas are lurking under its wide brim. And so she's not a fan of it at all, because she says they say they will do all these nice things, but they will do none of these nice things, and they will do a lot of awful things instead. Awful and nice, according to her definition, obviously. But yeah, that's what I would say about it as well. Like that's like they say some nice things that's not gonna happen, and they say a lot of awful things, and that is gonna happen, likely. So she's kind of right on that, and so it's weird that she.
I mean, is she engaging in conspiratorial activity right now by criticizing it?
Not according to her definition, but according to the ADL definition, she would, which is interesting. So. Yeah, she says that the far left does some conspiratorial activity around the Great Reset, but the majority is coming from the far right, and that's also what the last article that we want to cover is saying. So the article is in the Washington Monthly, and it's called "Inside the Many Conspiracy Theories About the Great Reset."
Far right provocateurs are spreading myriad falsehoods about the new initiative to meet their needs. Like, okay. So I guess Naomi Klein is part of the far right now.
So, so the author of this says that she also says on the far left and the far right, you have conspiracy theories surrounding the Great Reset, but then she goes.
They never put the far left in the title or on the little byline, do they?
They
always bury it in the article.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say now, because she then treats the far left and the far right like very, very differently in that article. So regarding the far left, she says, of course, those on the far left who are committed to viewing corporations as the enemy have responded to this initiative with derision, but they have a point. And then the point is that corporations are being asked and not directed by the initiative, right? But like the World Economic Forum is not a governmental organization; it can't direct anyone, but it does promote government action on things. So this is a non-starter. This is just weird framing of it. So, like, and she also says something like corporations are being asked. And the only thing that governments are asked to do is to create conditions for the government to be able to do those nice things. But that's not how it works. Governments creating those conditions means creating regulations which allow something, prohibit something else, right? Which is exactly ordering them to do and not asking them to do. So this just doesn't make sense. So this is her coverage of the far left, like, conspiracy activities regarding Great Reset. And then she says, on the far right, however, the Great Reset has become grist for massive QAnon-like conspiracy theories used by various groups to promote their own self-interest. For example, Justin Haskins is often referred to as a, quote, leading authority on the Great Reset in right-wing media. He not only writes for publications like Breitbart, he is the editorial director and the research fellow at the Heartland Institute, a libertarian public policy think tank founded in 1984 to deny the science of climate change. That is the backdrop on which Haskins distorts the message of the Great Reset, transforming it into a socialist plot to implement the Green New Deal, when in fact it is nothing but socialist. So it's clear that she's a socialist. Okay, I can tell that, but what do you have here, right? Leading authority on the Great Reset, Justin Haskins. So if you want, you can look him up. I don't know him that well, but he might have some good takes on it. Then he writes for Haram sites, so he's Haram too.
Yeah, like Breitbart, far right. I mean, Breitbart are definitely partisan right.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but I don't know. I've never seen them have any truck with ethno-nationalists all the time.
Yeah, it's so
just a smear.
Yeah. So naturally, Haskins, sorry that I don't know how to pronounce his name, says on Twitter that the author is smearing him with QAnon, which is true because he has nothing to do with QAnon and never talks about QAnon. But the author says, like, in the sentence prior to mentioning him, she mentions QAnon. She says, QAnon-like conspiracy theorists, for example, this guy. So, like, you can see why he would be outraged with it. But, like,
yeah. I mean, if I was him, I'd be upset. I'd be like, I'd never speak about this.
Exactly. And, of course, like, she's not, like, defaming him or anything like that. He can't do anything about it because, like, she's... No, because she's...
In law, maybe. But in reality, we all know that calling someone a QAnon-like conspiracy theorist or something like this is a social smear.
Yeah, but it is a social smear, but at the same time, she's not calling him a QAnon conspiracy theorist.
QAnon-like.
She's just positioning those two things close enough together so that they are connected in your head when you read it, right? So she's doing this kind of manipulative thing that's what he has problems with, right? Because you can't defend yourself against it other than through talking about it and saying, okay, like, this is clearly nonsense and this is just a smear. But because she's not saying, like, he supports QAnon, he can't do anything about it legally, which is, like, it's not that I'm saying she should be able to do anything about it legally, but
she's clearly being dishonest or
I'm just pointing out the tactics that she's using, right? And so this is the difference between the coverage of the far left coverage of
you wouldn't
the Great
say
Reset and the far right,
like conspiracy theorists such as Antifa rioting outside.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one side has a good point, and the other side is just QAnon crazies that are like far right. So this is the level.
And this is why the ADL wrote it in the way they wrote it as well, which
Yeah.
is that, right wingers criticize it, nut jobs, but
Yeah.
if far leftists criticize it, well, they got a good point. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got to listen to them.
Yep. So
Transparent as hell.
exactly, and so yeah, this has been a coverage of the Great Reset and why it is still a conspiracy at the end of 2020, which is fun because it's just ridiculous. So it's fun to point out these people who continue to say these things.